the foundation of self-respect, a Jungian perspective. Have you ever wondered why some people seem to command respect effortlessly, while others, no matter how kind, talented, or giving, get walked over repeatedly? Why certain individuals can enter a room and immediately be taken seriously, while others speak and are barely heard? Why some people's boundaries are never crossed, while yours seem to be made of paper? Maybe you're the person who constantly gives but rarely receives, who says yes when you mean no, who smiles when you're hurting inside, who makes yourself small to make others comfortable, who apologizes for existing, for having needs, for taking up space in the world. And what do you get in return for all this self-sacrifice? Dismissal, being taken for granted, having your time wasted, your energy drained, your contributions overlooked. People treating you like a convenience rather than a person, using your kindness as weakness and your availability as desperation. You tell yourself you're being understanding, mature, compassionate, but deep down there's a voice that whispers the uncomfortable truth. You're being disrespected because you've never learned to respect yourself. And until you fix that fundamental relationship, the one with yourself, nothing else will change. Carl Jung understood this dynamic better than perhaps any psychologist who ever lived. He saw that our external world is nothing more than a reflection of our internal world. The way people treat you isn't random or cruel fate. It's a direct mirror of how you treat yourself, how you value yourself, how you position yourself in the world. This video isn't going to coddle you or tell you that everyone else is the problem. It's going to show you the brutal truth about why you accept unacceptable treatment and what you must do to change it. Because the uncomfortable reality is this: as long as you betray yourself, everyone else will follow your lead. If you're tired of being overlooked, undervalued, and treated like you don't matter, then it's time to understand the psychological mechanisms that create this dynamic. It's time to stop waiting for others to recognize your worth and start building it from the inside out. Are you ready to hear what you've been avoiding? Are you prepared to take responsibility for how you've been allowing yourself to be treated? Then let's dive into Jung's profound insights about self-respect and why it's the foundation of everything else in your life. The mirror of your inner world. The world around you isn't as random as it appears. Every interaction, every relationship, every way people respond to you is actually a precise reflection of your unconscious beliefs about yourself. This is one of Jung's most powerful insights, that external reality mirrors internal reality with disturbing accuracy. When someone interrupts you mid-sentence, they're not just being rude, they're responding to an invisible signal you're broadcasting that says your thoughts don't matter. When people consistently cancel plans with you last minute, they're reading an energy that communicates you'll always be available, that your time has no value. When others take credit for your work, they sense you won't fight for yourself. This isn't victim blaming, it's recognition of a psychological law. Jung called it projection. But it works both ways. Just as you project your inner conflicts onto others, they pick up on and respond to the unconscious messages you're constantly transmitting about your own worth. Think about it. Have you ever met someone who just commanded respect without saying a word? Someone whose presence alone made people listen more carefully, treat them more considerately, take them more seriously. They weren't necessarily more attractive, more successful, or more charismatic than you. They had something else, an unshakable sense of their own value that was so deeply rooted it radiated outward. These people don't beg for respect because they don't need to. They embody it. They've integrated a fundamental truth that others sense immediately. This person values themselves, so I should value them too. This person respects themselves, so I need to respect them as well. But if you've spent years devaluing yourself, accepting less than you deserve, tolerating treatment you would never accept for a friend, then you're broadcasting the opposite message. You're unconsciously telling the world, "I don't think I'm worth much, so feel free to treat me accordingly." This process happens entirely below the threshold of consciousness. You don't wake up and decide to disrespect yourself, and others don't consciously decide to mirror that disrespect back to you. It's an automatic, unconscious dance of energies and expectations that plays out in every relationship, every interaction, every social situation. Jung understood that this dynamic is rooted in what he called our complexes, unconscious emotional patterns formed early in life that continue to influence our behavior as adults. If you learned as a child that love was conditional on being good, that your needs didn't matter, that speaking up was dangerous, these beliefs became embedded in your psyche as immutable truths. These childhood conclusions about your worth don't just stay in your head, they shape your posture, your tone of voice, your eye contact, your body language, your energy. They determine how quickly you apologize, how often you say sorry, how much space you take up in conversations, whether you state your opinions as facts or tentative suggestions. People pick up on these subtle cues and respond accordingly, not because they're malicious, but because you're training them how to treat you through thousands of micro-communications that happen below conscious awareness. You're giving them permission to dismiss you by dismissing yourself first. The good news is that this is a learned pattern, which means it can be unlearned. But first, you need to become conscious of how you've been unconsciously positioning yourself in the world. You need to recognize the ways you've been betraying yourself daily, moment by moment, interaction by interaction. The prison of people-pleasing. You've built your entire identity around being the person who never causes problems, the agreeable one, the understanding one, the one who always accommodates, who never complains, who makes everyone else's life easier even when it makes your own life harder. And you tell yourself this makes you a good person. But Jung would challenge that narrative. He'd ask you to examine what's really driving this compulsive need to please others at your own expense. Is it genuine kindness or is it fear? Fear of rejection, abandonment, conflict, or simply being disliked. The people-pleaser operates from a deeply unconscious belief that their authentic self is unacceptable. They've learned that love and acceptance are earned through service, compliance, and self-sacrifice. They've internalized the message that their value lies not in who they are, but in what they do for others. This creates what Jung called a false self, a carefully constructed persona designed to win approval and avoid rejection. You become an expert at reading rooms, anticipating needs, preventing conflicts, and maintaining harmony at all costs. But the cost is always the same. Your authentic self gets buried deeper and deeper. The tragic irony is that people-pleasers rarely get the respect they're desperately seeking through their self-sacrifice. Instead, they get taken advantage of. They become the go-to person for favors, the one who can always be counted on to say yes, the reliable workhorse who never needs to be thanked or appreciated. Why does this happen? Because respect and people-pleasing are fundamentally incompatible. Respect is earned through boundaries, consistency, and the willingness to disappoint others when necessary. People-pleasing is the opposite. It's the compulsive need to make everyone happy regardless of the personal cost. When you consistently prioritize others' comfort over your own truth, you communicate something profound, that you don't believe your needs, wants, or opinions are as important as theirs. You teach people that your boundaries are negotiable, your time is unlimited, and your energy is freely available to anyone who asks. This creates a vicious cycle. The more you please others at your own expense, the less they value what you're giving them. The less they value your contributions, the harder you try to please them. The harder you try to please them, the more they take you for granted, and round it goes. Jung understood that breaking this cycle requires what he called individuation. the process of becoming your authentic self rather than the self you think others want you to be. This means learning to disappoint people when necessary, to say no without extensive justification, to prioritize your own needs without guilt. But this feels terrifying for people pleasers because their entire sense of security is built on being liked and needed. They equate being disliked with being unloved, being unnecessary with being worthless. They'd rather be used than be alone. The breakthrough comes when you realize that true connection, the kind that actually nourishes your soul, can only happen when you show up authentically, when you stop performing and start being real, when you stop trying to be perfect and start being human. People don't actually respect perfection. They respect authenticity. They don't connect with performances. They connect with truth. And the people who matter will love you more for being real than they ever could for being agreeable. The unconscious contracts you've signed. Throughout your life, you've unconsciously signed invisible contracts with the people around you. Contracts that dictate how you'll be treated, what you'll tolerate, and what you'll accept as normal. The problem is, you wrote these contracts from a place of low self-worth, and now you're bound by their terms. Jung called these unconscious agreements, unspoken understandings about the roles you'll play in relationships. Maybe you're the one who always listens but rarely gets heard, the one who gives advice but never receives support, the one who remembers everyone's birthday but whose own goes unnoticed. These contracts were written early, often in childhood, when you learned what behaviors earned love and what behaviors led to rejection. You discovered that being helpful made you valuable, that being needy made you burdensome, that being agreeable made you acceptable. So you unconsciously agreed to be the helper, the giver, the one who never needs anything in return. You signed up to be convenient, low maintenance, and always available. You committed to making others' lives easier while making your own life smaller. But here's what Jung understood that most people miss. These contracts aren't just about how others treat you, they're about how you treat yourself. Every time you break a promise to yourself, every time you ignore your own needs, every time you sacrifice your truth for someone else's comfort, you're reinforcing the contract that says, you don't matter. Think about the last time you said you'd start exercising, eating better, pursuing a hobby, or taking time for yourself. How many times did you postpone or abandon these commitments the moment someone else needed something? How quickly did you break your word to yourself to keep your word to others? This pattern teaches everyone around you, including yourself, that your commitments to yourself are less important than your commitments to others, that your needs are always secondary, that you can be counted on to sacrifice yourself whenever necessary. Jung believed that the relationship you have with yourself is the template for every other relationship in your life. If you consistently break promises to yourself, others will learn they can break promises to you. If you consistently devalue your own time, others will learn to waste it. If you consistently ignore your own needs, others will learn to ignore them too. The unconscious contracts you've signed aren't just about big gestures. They're about the thousands of small daily choices that communicate your value. How long you let people keep you waiting, whether you follow through on your own commitments to yourself, how you speak to yourself in your internal dialogue, whether you follow through on commitments you've made to yourself. Breaking these contracts requires what Jung called conscious choice, the deliberate decision to start honoring yourself the way you honor others. It means keeping promises to yourself with the same integrity you bring to promises to others. It means treating your time, energy, and needs as valuable, not as afterthoughts. This feels selfish to people who have spent their lives being selfless. But Jung understood that healthy selfishness, the kind that honors your authentic needs and boundaries, is actually the foundation of healthy relationships. You can't give from an empty cup, and you can't respect others if you don't respect yourself. The people who truly care about you will celebrate your decision to value yourself more highly. They'll adjust to your new boundaries without making you feel guilty. The people who resist, who try to guilt you back into the old contracts, are telling you everything you need to know about their investment in your well-being. The shadow of self-abandonment. There's a dark side to your people-pleasing, boundaryless, self-sacrificing behavior that you probably don't want to acknowledge. Jung would call it your shadow, the hidden, unconscious aspects of your personality that you've rejected, but that continue to influence your behavior in destructive ways. Your shadow contains all the ways you've learned to abandon yourself, the anger you swallow, the resentment you deny, the rage that builds when you give and get nothing back, the part of you that wants to scream, "What about me?" but has learned it's not allowed to have that thought. Jung understood that what we repress doesn't disappear. It goes underground and expresses itself in unconscious ways. Your repressed anger might emerge as passive aggression. Your denied resentment might show up as chronic fatigue or depression. Your silenced voice might manifest as anxiety or physical symptoms. The shadow also contains your disowned power, the part of you that knows how to say no, the part that wants to be seen and heard and valued, the part that has opinions, desires, and needs that don't revolve around making others comfortable. This power has been so thoroughly repressed that accessing it feels foreign, even dangerous. Many people who struggle with self-respect have a complicated relationship with power and assertiveness. They've learned to equate these qualities with being mean or selfish. They've internalized the message that good people don't advocate for themselves, don't have strong opinions, don't prioritize their own needs. But Jung knew that integrating your shadow, including your healthy aggression and legitimate self-interest, is essential for psychological wholeness. You can't have authentic self-respect while rejecting the parts of yourself that know how to stand up, speak out, and say no. Your shadow also contains the ways you've been complicit in your own mistreatment, the times you've enabled others' disrespectful behavior by not addressing it, the moments you've taught people they can take advantage of you by allowing it to happen without consequences. This is perhaps the hardest truth to face. You've participated in creating the dynamic you're complaining about, not because you're weak or stupid, but because you've been operating from unconscious programming that equates self-sacrifice with virtue and self-advocacy with selfishness. Jung believed that taking responsibility for your shadow, including your role in enabling mistreatment, is paradoxically liberating. When you stop seeing yourself purely as a victim and start recognizing your agency, you reclaim the power to change the dynamic. This doesn't mean blaming yourself for others' bad behavior. It means recognizing that you have more control over how you're treated than you've been willing to acknowledge. You can't control others, but you can control your responses to them. You can't force respect, but you can demand it through your actions. Integrating your shadow means befriending the parts of yourself that know how to protect you, advocate for you, and value you appropriately. It means reclaiming your healthy aggression, your appropriate selfishness, your legitimate needs and desires. This integration doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't mean becoming mean or selfish. It means becoming whole. It means having access to your full range of human responses instead of being limited to people-pleasing and self-sacrifice. It means becoming someone who can be both kind and boundaried, both generous and self-protective. The architecture of self-respect. Self-respect isn't a feeling you can think your way into or a mindset you can adopt overnight. It's an architecture, a carefully constructed foundation built through concrete actions, consistent choices, and daily practices that demonstrate to yourself and others that you have value. Jung understood that lasting change happens through behavior modification, not just insight. You can understand intellectually that you deserve respect, but until you start acting like someone who deserves respect, nothing changes. Your unconscious mind believes your actions more than your thoughts. The architecture of self-respect begins with what Jung called conscious choice, the deliberate decision to honor your authentic needs and boundaries even when it's uncomfortable. This means saying no to requests that drain you, yes to opportunities that nourish you, and maybe to situations that require further consideration. It means keeping appointments with yourself as seriously as you keep appointments with others. If you've scheduled time for exercise, reading, or reflection, you honor that commitment. You don't automatically cancel your self-care the moment someone else needs something. Self-respect is built through what might seem like small choices, but are actually profound statements of value. How long you spend getting ready in the morning, whether you eat lunch or skip it to work through. How you speak to yourself in your internal dialogue, whether you follow through on commitments you've made to yourself. Jung believed that the unconscious mind is always watching, always taking notes about how you treat yourself. Every time you break a promise to yourself, every time you sacrifice your well-being for others' convenience, every time you accept treatment you wouldn't accept for a friend, you're teaching your unconscious that you don't matter. But every time you honor a boundary, every time you keep a commitment to yourself, every time you speak up for your needs, you're sending the opposite message. You're teaching your unconscious and everyone around you that you have value, that you matter, that you deserve consideration. This process requires what Jung called individuation, the journey of becoming your authentic self rather than the self you think others want you to be. This means getting to know your actual preferences, not just the ones that make you likable. Your real values, not just the ones that make you acceptable. It means learning to trust your own judgment instead of constantly seeking external validation. It means developing your own opinions instead of adopting whatever position seems most popular. It means pursuing your own interests instead of only engaging in activities that others approve of. The architecture of self-respect also includes surrounding yourself with people who reinforce your worth rather than exploit it. Jung understood that we become like the people we spend time with. So choosing relationships that reflect your value is crucial for maintaining healthy self-regard. This doesn't mean becoming arrogant or dismissive of others. It means becoming discerning about who gets access to your time, energy, and emotional resources. It means understanding that your presence is a gift, not a given, and that people need to earn the privilege of your company through their treatment of you. Building self-respect is like building physical strength. It requires consistent practice, gradual progression, and patience with the process. You start with small acts of self-honoring and gradually work up to bigger boundaries and bolder self-advocacy. The language of boundaries. One of the most fundamental ways you communicate your self-worth is through your boundaries, or lack thereof. Jung understood that boundaries aren't just about saying no. They're about defining who you are, what you value, and how you allow yourself to be treated. But many people who struggle with self-respect have never learned the language of healthy boundaries. They were taught that having needs was selfish, that saying no was mean, that good people always accommodate others regardless of personal cost. Jung would say that boundaries aren't walls that separate you from others. They're bridges that allow for authentic connection. When you clearly communicate your limits, you give others the information they need to respect you. When you don't have boundaries, you force others to guess, and they often guess wrong. The language of boundaries starts with simple, clear statements that don't require extensive justification. I'm not available for that. That doesn't work for me. I need some time to think about it. I've already made other commitments. These phrases communicate your limits without inviting negotiation or debate. People who struggle with boundaries often feel guilty for having them. They over-explain, over-apologize, and over-justify their decisions. This apologetic approach undermines the boundary before it's even established. It communicates that you're not really sure you have the right to your own limits. Jung believed that guilt about boundaries usually stems from childhood programming that equated love with availability. If your worth was measured by how helpful you were, how accommodating you could be, how rarely you caused inconvenience, then setting boundaries feels like withdrawing love. But healthy boundaries actually enhance relationships by creating clarity and preventing resentment. When you clearly communicate your limits, people know where they stand. When you honor your own needs, you show up more fully for others. When you stop sacrificing yourself, you stop building resentment that poisons connection. The language of boundaries also includes learning to receive boundary setting from others without taking it personally. When someone says no to you, they're not rejecting you as a person. They're taking care of themselves. Modeling this gracious acceptance teaches others how to respond when you set boundaries with them. Jung understood that boundaries are ultimately about self-definition rather than other control. You can't force people to respect your boundaries, but you can control your response when they don't. You can remove yourself from situations where your boundaries aren't honored. You can limit access to people who consistently cross your lines. The most powerful boundary language is often nonverbal. How you carry yourself, how much space you take up, how long you maintain eye contact, how quickly you respond to unreasonable requests. These subtle communications often say more about your self-respect than your words ever could. Learning the language of boundaries requires practice and patience. You'll make mistakes, set boundaries too rigidly or too loosely, feel guilty for having needs, or angry when others have needs. This is all part of the learning process that Jung called individuation, becoming your authentic self rather than the self you think others want you to be. The transformation. When you finally begin to respect yourself, really respect yourself, not just intellectually understand that you should, something profound shifts in your entire experience of life. Jung called this transformation individuation, and it's perhaps the most important journey you'll ever undertake. The first thing you notice is that your energy changes. When you stop constantly betraying yourself, when you stop saying yes when you mean no, when you stop sacrificing your needs for others' convenience, you reclaim enormous amounts of mental and emotional energy that were being drained by internal conflict. You also notice that your relationships begin to shift. Some people, the ones who were primarily invested in what you could do for them rather than who you are, may drift away. This can be painful, but Jung understood it as necessary, pruning that makes room for healthier connections. Other relationships deepen and improve. When you show up authentically, when you're honest about your needs and boundaries, when you stop performing and start being real, you give others permission to do the same. The connections that survive this transformation become more genuine, more nourishing, more mutually respectful. Your decision-making becomes clearer because you're no longer torn between what you want and what you think others want from you. When you're aligned with your authentic values and needs, choices become more obvious. You spend less time agonizing over decisions and more time taking action. You develop what Jung called psychological sovereignty, the ability to validate yourself from within rather than constantly seeking external approval. This doesn't mean becoming arrogant or dismissive of others' opinions. It means developing an internal compass that helps you navigate life according to your own values rather than others' expectations. Perhaps most importantly, you develop genuine confidence, not the brittle, defensive kind that's built on comparison and competition, but the quiet strength that comes from self-knowledge and self-acceptance. This confidence is attractive to others because it's not needy or demanding. It simply is. People begin to treat you differently, often without conscious awareness of why. They listen more carefully when you speak. They're less likely to interrupt or dismiss you. They take your time more seriously. They're more considerate of your needs and feelings. This shift happens because you're communicating differently at every level, verbally, energetically, behaviorally. You're no longer broadcasting "I don't matter" through your actions and choices. Instead, you're consistently demonstrating "I have value" through how you treat yourself and what you accept from others. Jung understood that this transformation ripples outward beyond your immediate relationships. When you respect yourself, you model possibility for others who are struggling with the same issues. Your self-respect gives others permission to respect themselves. Your boundaries show others that boundaries are possible. The transformation isn't always smooth or linear. You'll have setbacks, moments when you revert to old patterns, times when you doubt your worth or compromise your boundaries. Jung saw these as natural parts of the individuation process, not failures to be ashamed of, but learning opportunities to be embraced. What matters is the overall trajectory, the consistent choice to honor yourself even when it's difficult, the commitment to treating yourself as someone worthy of respect and consideration. Over time, these choices compound, creating a foundation of self-worth that becomes unshakable. You now stand at a crossroads that will determine not just how others treat you, but how you experience your entire life. You can continue as you have been, accommodating, people-pleasing, accepting whatever treatment others offer, or you can choose the more difficult but infinitely more rewarding path of self-respect. Understand that this choice has consequences. When you start respecting yourself, some people won't like it. They've grown comfortable with your availability, your accommodation, your willingness to sacrifice yourself for their convenience. Your new boundaries will inconvenience them, and they may try to guilt you back into the old patterns. This resistance isn't a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's confirmation that you're doing something necessary. The people who resist your self-respect are revealing how much they've been benefiting from your self-disrespect. Their discomfort is the price of your freedom. Jung understood that individuation, becoming your authentic self, is often a lonely journey. You may lose relationships that were built on your willingness to be convenient rather than genuine. You may face criticism from people who preferred you as a doormat. You may have to disappoint people who took your endless availability for granted. But you'll also discover something remarkable. When you respect yourself, you become more respectable. When you value yourself, you become more valuable. When you treat yourself with dignity, others naturally follow your lead. The choice to respect yourself isn't a one-time decision. It's a daily practice, a moment-by-moment commitment to honoring your authentic needs and boundaries. It's choosing to keep promises to yourself even when no one else will notice. It's speaking up for yourself even when your voice shakes. It's saying no even when yes would be easier. This choice requires courage because it means taking responsibility for your own well-being instead of hoping others will magically start treating you better. It means acknowledging that you've participated in teaching people how to treat you and committing to teaching them something different. It means accepting that you can't control how others behave, but you can control how you respond to their behavior. You can't force respect, but you can require it by refusing to engage with people who consistently demonstrate disrespect. Jung believed that the ultimate goal of human development is to become who you truly are rather than who you think you should be. This means honoring your authentic needs, expressing your genuine thoughts, and living according to your own values rather than others' expectations. When you make this choice, really make it, not just think about making it, your entire life reorganizes around your newfound self-respect. Your relationships become healthier, your decisions become clearer, your energy increases, your confidence grows, your life becomes your own. The question is, are you ready to stop waiting for others to give you the respect you've never given yourself? Are you prepared to do the difficult work of building genuine self-worth from the inside out? Can you find the courage to disappoint people who have grown comfortable with your self-sacrifice? If you've recognized yourself in this video, if you've seen the patterns of self-disrespect that have been shaping your relationships, then you already know what you need to do. The only question is whether you'll do it. Your self-respect, or lack thereof, is the foundation upon which every other aspect of your life is built. Change that foundation, and everything else changes with it. Continue to neglect it, and nothing else will ever truly improve. The choice, as always, is yours. But remember, until you respect yourself, nobody else will. This isn't a cruel judgment. It's simply how human psychology works. People take their cues about how to treat you from how you treat yourself. If this message has resonated with you, if you recognize the patterns we've discussed, share your commitment in the comments below. Write, "I choose to respect myself starting today." Sometimes making a public declaration helps solidify our private commitments. And if you're ready to dive deeper into these concepts, to understand Jung's psychology of self-worth at an even more practical level, make sure to watch the next video where we'll explore specific strategies for building unshakable self-respect in a world that often rewards self-sacrifice. Remember, you teach people how to treat you through how you treat yourself. Make sure you're teaching the right lesson